Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we dive deep into one of the most shocking truths unfolding before our eyes. Putin's war machine is bleeding Russia dry, and the economy is spiraling into a free fall. What began as a show of power has turned into a slow-motion collapse that is reshaping the very foundations of Russia's strength, wealth, and future. When Vladimir Putin launched his so-called special military operation in Ukraine, he promised the Russian people a swift and decisive victory. Instead, it has become an endless drain on the nation's resources. The cost of war has devoured billions of dollars, swallowed industries, and crippled the lives of ordinary citizens. What was once an empire built on oil, gas, and pride is now buckling under the weight of economic isolation and internal decay. The Russian economy once stood tall on the global stage. Its energy exports funded a lifestyle of luxury for the elite and stability for the working class. But now, sanctions from the West have cut deep. Oil exports face price caps, gas pipelines to Europe are running dry, and even China, Russia's so-called ally, is driving hard bargains, buying energy at rock bottom prices. Moscow's financial reserves are shrinking rapidly, and the ruble has lost much of its value. Inflation has become a daily nightmare for ordinary Russians, who can barely afford basic food, rent, and fuel. Inside Russia, the illusion of control is fading. The Kremlin's propaganda machine continues to pump out promises of victory and stability, but people can feel the truth in their pockets. Factories that once built cars and consumer goods are now converted to produce weapons. Skilled workers are leaving the country in record numbers. Engineers, scientists, and IT specialists fleeing to Europe, Central Asia, or anywhere they can find freedom and opportunity. Russia is losing its brightest minds, the very people who once helped it stand strong. The war machine keeps demanding more. Billions are spent every month on missiles, drones, and ammunition. The government prints money to fund it, which only fuels more inflation. Corruption spreads like wildfire. Officials line their pockets, while soldiers in the trenches lack proper equipment, food, or even winter clothing. Mothers weep for sons who never return home, while oligarchs live in luxury behind guarded walls. Meanwhile, small towns and villages across Russia are falling into silence. Shops are closing, roads are empty, and hope is fading. The young are either sent to fight or desperate to escape. Families are torn apart. The social fabric of the country is unraveling as the cost of Putin's ambition becomes unbearable. Internationally, Russia is now a shadow of its former self. Once a feared power in global politics, it now struggles to maintain even basic trade with many nations. Its banks have been cut off from the global financial system. Major companies like McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and Apple have pulled out, leaving behind empty buildings and jobless workers. Even allies like India and China are treating Moscow more as a desperate partner than a respected power. But the most painful truth is that this economic collapse is self-inflicted. Every missile fired, every drone launched, every tank sent into Ukraine comes at the expense of Russia's own people. Roads go unrepaired, hospitals lack medicine, schools run short of teachers, all while billions vanish into the black hole of war. Putin's government tries to hide the numbers, but economists estimate that Russia's defense spending now consumes nearly half of the national budget. That means less for social welfare, healthcare, education, and infrastructure. The ruble continues to slide, and food prices have doubled in some regions. Pensioners who once survived on modest government stipends are now choosing between bread and medicine. At the same time, the country's elite are moving their money abroad, fearing the worst. Russian billionaires have quietly bought properties in Dubai, Turkey, and Southeast Asia, sensing that the economic storm is far from over. Even within Putin's inner circle, there are whispers of fear that the empire they built is collapsing from the inside, and yet the propaganda continues to tell a different story. On state television, they speak of triumphs, victories, and glory. They call it a war for survival, a battle against the West, a fight for Russia's destiny, But deep down, the people know the truth. The lines at supermarkets, the empty shelves, the crumbling factories, all of it tells a story that cannot be hidden by lies. Russia's younger generation is the most disillusioned. Many grew up dreaming of modern lives, travel, technology, freedom. Now they see their dreams vanishing as borders close, opportunities disappear, and the future becomes uncertain. Some are being forced into military service. Others live in fear of being silenced for speaking out. The cost of war is no longer measured only in rubles, but in hope, in freedom, in humanity itself. The question now is not whether Russia can win this war, but whether it can survive it. The economic wounds are deep, and even if the fighting stopped tomorrow, it would take decades to recover. Industries have been gutted, trust has been shattered, and the country's reputation has been stained on the global stage. But beyond the politics and the headlines lies a deeper tragedy. The story of ordinary Russians who never wanted this war, who only wanted peace and dignity. They are the ones paying the price for decisions made in gilded halls far away from their suffering. The farmers who can't sell their crops, the teachers who can't buy books for their students, the mothers who wait for sons that never return. These are the real victims of Putin's war machine. The empire that was once feared is now bleeding from within. The economy that once fueled power is collapsing under its own weight, and the leader who promised greatness is watching his nation sink into chaos. History will remember this not as an age of glory, but as the moment when one man's obsession consumed an entire country. So as the world watches, the truth becomes clearer every day. Putin's war machine is not just destroying Ukraine, it's destroying Russia itself. The real battle is no longer on the front lines, but inside the heart of a nation that's being drained of its wealth, its hope, and its soul. This is the cost of unchecked power, the price of pride, and the tragedy of a war that was never meant to be. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to talk about something that is shaking the very core of Russia. Putin's war machine, once seen as a symbol of national power, is now bleeding the country dry. The Russian economy, once rich and strong, is now spiraling into a free fall that threatens to tear apart the foundations of the nation itself. What started as a promise of victory and pride has turned into a nightmare of loss, desperation, and collapse. When Vladimir Putin launched his war in Ukraine, he called it a special operation. He told his people it would be quick, decisive, and glorious. But instead of triumph, Russia found itself trapped in a long, bloody, and costly conflict that has drained its finances, shattered its industries, and isolated it from much of the world. The war that was supposed to make Russia stronger has made it weaker than ever before. Every day, the cost of this war rises. Trillions of rubles are being poured into the battlefield, while factories and families back home suffer. The Russian economy, once fueled by energy exports, is running out of breath. The West's sanctions have cut deep into Moscow's financial veins. Oil and gas, the lifeblood of Russia's economy, are no longer bringing the wealth they once did. European buyers have turned away, and even China and India, Russia's supposed friends, are taking advantage of the situation, buying oil at prices far below market value. The ruble has crashed, inflation is soaring, and for millions of ordinary Russians, survival has become a daily struggle. The war machine keeps demanding more and more money, more weapons, more manpower, and more sacrifices. Factories that once made cars, electronics, and everyday goods have been turned into arms plants. Skilled workers are being forced into military production or sent to the front lines. Over 1 million young Russians have fled the country since the war began. Engineers, doctors, scientists, programmers, people who could have built Russia's future. Now they are gone, leaving behind a hollow, doubt economy and a growing sense of despair. The propaganda machine in Moscow keeps telling the people that everything is fine, that the economy is resilient, and the West is collapsing. But the truth can't be hidden forever. Walk through the streets of small Russian towns, and you'll see empty shops, closed businesses, and people lining up for basic necessities. Prices have doubled, sometimes tripled. Bread, milk, fuel, All of it costs more than ever. And while the poor struggle to survive, the rich and powerful still live in luxury, hiding their wealth in foreign accounts and villas abroad. Putin's government claims that the war is about protecting Russia from the West, but the real enemy lies within. Corruption is bleeding the country faster than any bullet. Billions of dollars meant for soldiers, weapons, and infrastructure disappear into the pockets of officials and oligarchs. Soldiers complain of hunger, lack of medical care, and outdated equipment. Videos of mothers crying over their sons' coffins circulate quietly online, even as state media pretends that everything is under control. The contrast between the truth and the propaganda is tearing at the nation's soul. Internationally, Russia's image has crumbled. Once seen as a formidable world power, it now finds itself isolated and distrusted. Major global companies have left the Russian market. McDonald's, Apple, Starbucks, Coca-Cola, all gone. Thousands of jobs vanished overnight, leaving empty buildings as silent reminders of a vanished world. Russian banks have been cut off from the global system, and travelers find themselves unwelcome in countries that once welcomed them. The dream of global influence has turned into a nightmare of economic exile. Inside the country, fear is the new currency. People whisper about the future, afraid to speak openly. Journalists who dare to tell the truth are silenced, imprisoned, or forced to flee. The internet is tightly controlled, and even social media posts criticizing the war can lead to arrest. The once proud Russian spirit, known for its courage and resilience, is being crushed under the weight of repression and propaganda. The war is not only destroying Russia's economy, it is destroying its freedom, its people, and its very soul. Every tank that rolls into Ukraine, every missile fired, every drone launch, each one is paid for with the sweat and suffering of the Russian people. Schools go unfunded, hospitals lack medicine, and pensioners live in poverty, while billions are spent to keep the war machine running. Economists estimate that almost half of Russia's national budget is now consumed by defense spending. That means less money for everything else. The nation is bleeding from within, and no amount of lies can hide that truth. But perhaps the greatest tragedy is what this war has done to the Russian people themselves. Many of them never wanted this conflict. They were told it would protect their homeland, bring honor, and secure their future. Instead, it has brought grief, hunger, and shame. Young men drafted into the army return home in coffins, or not at all. Families are torn apart. A new generation is growing up in fear, uncertainty, and hopelessness. The future they were promised has been stolen. Russia's empire is collapsing, not because of an external enemy, but because of greed, pride, and lies. The ruble continues to lose value, industries crumble, and the black market thrives. People trade whatever they can just to survive. In many towns, you can feel the silence. The factories no longer hum, the streets are no longer busy, and the laughter of children has faded. The nation that once dreamed of greatness now wakes up to hunger and despair. Even those closest to Putin are beginning to see the cracks. Oligarchs are moving their money abroad, preparing for the worst. The loyal officials who once cheered his every decision now whisper in fear, wondering how long this can continue. The truth is spreading quietly, even among those who once believed the lies. They can see that the war is not saving Russia. It is destroying it from the inside out, and yet Putin presses on. He continues to pour Russia's wealth into the battlefield, sacrificing the nation's future for his obsession with power. He cannot admit defeat, because doing so would mean admitting that everything he built was based on deception. But the walls are closing in, the economy is collapsing, the people are suffering, and the world is watching. History will remember this moment not as one of Russian triumph, but as one of tragic downfall. In the end, the war machine that was meant to bring glory to Russia has become its own executioner. The ruble is weak, the people are weary, and the once great nation is bleeding out. The empire that dreamed of conquering others has instead conquered itself. Putin's war machine is not just destroying Ukraine, It is consuming Russia's economy, its dignity, and its soul. This is the real cost of war. Not in victories or losses on the battlefield, but in the broken lives, empty homes, and shattered dreams of a nation that once had everything and now has almost nothing left.